Hello, this is the first homework assignment for Node.js masterclass from Pirple. The goal of this assignment was to create a Hello API. When a user sends requests to the Hello route, a welcome message is returned in JSON format. Let's take a look how the application works. To start the application, I use the node command, node index.js. Well, Node.js is my start file. The application lets us know that it's running on two ports, HTTP and HTTPS. Let's open up Postman and make the first request. I am using port 4000 to make a request to the default route. I get the following message, explaining how I should use the application. It lists the available languages also. So let's make a request to the hello route. I get a hello greeting in Esperanto. To get a greeting in another language, I'm going to use a query parameter. Let's say I want to choose Czech. I get a message in Czech. Let's try Russian. Let's try Belarusian. Okay, it works. So let's now choose a language that is not available. I'm going to get a greeting in Esperanto, the default language. Now let's say I'm going to use the route that doesn't exist. It sends me back the instructions. So I'm again in the default route. Let's go to the default route explicitly. I get the same instructions. Now let's do the same using the HTTPS protocol. In the web browser, I go to the hello route. Now let's check if the language for Czech works. It does. Now let's go and take a look at the construction of the application. Let's start with the index Node.js. That was the start file I used in the beginning. So in here I'm only got one dependency, that's server. I declare a variable app. It got only one function, let's go init. I initialize the server within it. And that's it. Let's go to the server.js. So in here, the initialization function starts the HTTP and HTTP servers, and then also prints out the messages. Those messages you've seen in the command prompt. It prints out the number of the ports and the name of the environment that it gets from the configuration file. And we'll take a look at the configuration file later on. The HTTP server is different for the HTTPS in that the later also requires the key and certification. I have those in separate files in the HTTPS folder. The most important function in this file is unified server. It takes care of the request from the user and connects to the route. The first thing that I'm doing here is I'm getting the URI from the user. I parse it to get a different element that it includes. I get the path name, and then I trim the path. That is, I remove the slashes to get the name of the route the user wants to connect to. Then I also get the additional query string parameter language. I use the router dictionary to get the handler that I want. So if the string path equals to hello, I'm going to use that handler. Otherwise, I'm going to use the default handler. And the handlers are defined in the dictionary called server.router, and it's defined below. I only got two ones over here, the default and the hello handlers, and those are defined in the handlers.js file. Afterwards, I'm going to construct data that I'm going to send into the router, into the handler. The data I'm sending is string path and the query string parameter and the method. After the handler is invoked, I check the status code. It is not a valid number. I set it to 200. If the payload for some reason is not an object, I just set it to an empty object. Afterwards, I stringify the payload and I send it as the response to the user. So now we are in the handlers.js file. I got hello and default handlers over here. The default one only prints out the message how I should use the application. And the hello handler gets the language from the query string object. If it's not a valid string, I just set to false. If it's valid, then I try to use my dictionary defined at the beginning of the file. By default, it is set to Esperanto. As the return, I call back 200, the greeting and an explanation mark. Let's take a look at the configuration file. Over here I have environments defined. There are two of them. The staging and the production. They have HTTP port and HTTPS port numbers and the environment name. To choose environment, I gotta use a parameter. By default, it's staging. As you can see, when I start the application, I didn't use any parameter. Let's change it now. Let's close the application. Let's start the application again. This time, the parameter is going to be production. As you can see, the server started in production and the port numbers are different. If I'm using Windows, then the production or staging environment is going to be the last argument. If I'm on Linux, then I will have to use the parameter name that is not underline env.